Well, our team's doing okay, huh?
All right. Once again, welcome to Boston Square. Let's give it up. Thank you all for coming out here tonight. And I think it's so important that you all are here and you all came out to see the mayor of Detroit, Mike Duggan. Give it up for him. We got to ask for a show of hands of where folks are from, and people have traveled from far and near to come in here what Mayor Duggan has to share with us this evening. I'm excited to hear it. It's that season, right? Where you got a lot of people running for different offices and a lot of different opinions. And right here, we got somebody who's pretty seasoned, who has an incredible track record of work he's done on the east side of the state, and we're here on the west side. So we need some of that love over here. We want to hear from Mayor Duggan, what exactly his plan is to do that. Let's give a round of applause for Mayor Duggan.
Well, thank you, Richard, for the invitation to the Boston Square neighborhood in this beautiful community center. This is terrific, isn't it? How long has it been open?
Couple months.
Couple of months. But this is what I'm doing, is I'm going to every corner of the state and getting a chance to sit and talk to folks. So yesterday, I did Hillsdale, Dundee, down near the Ohio border. This afternoon at Bamboo in downtown Grand Rapids with the tech community. And now I wanted to come to the Boston Square neighborhood. And this is the only way I know how to campaign, is I want to introduce myself to you. Some of you I've met before, for most of you, this is the first time. And I've learned that the only way to do this is I'll be back again and again and again. So you can kind of hear what I'm saying. You'll notice if you come from place to place, I give the same speech, no matter what group it's in. I don't change my message from audience to audience. And this is going to be a really nice day. They have all of you come out on a weeknight like this, 8 months ahead of the election. It's a pretty significant indication of your commitment. Let me tell you about myself, and then I'm going to answer any question that you have. But I was born in the city of Detroit. Moved to the suburbs when I was a child, but went to high school in Detroit. And the city that I grew up in was a magic place. Detroit, my childhood, was beautiful neighborhoods. Everybody could get a good job in the auto industry. The shopping downtown was amazing. And in the course of my life, everything we knew was taken away from us. The auto plants moved out. The stores moved out. The movie theaters moved out. The banks moved out. Our neighbors moved out. By the time I became mayor, there were 47,000 abandoned houses in the city of Detroit. The 10 years before I got elected, 200,000 people moved out of Detroit. That's the entire population of Grand Rapids. Imagine if every man, woman, and child moved out of Grand Rapids in a 10-year period and left all the buildings behind. That was what I was coming into when I got elected mayor. Well, when I was coming out of law school in Ann Arbor, my classmates were going to Chicago, LA, New York. And I said, I'm only applying for jobs in Detroit. And they said, Detroit? I said, I feel like I have a responsibility. I want to help the city come back. And then I got downtown and found out I was the only one I had in the city. I was way ahead of any kind of recovery. But I had a great career. I was deputy county executive. I oversaw the building of the McNamara terminal that you fly in and out of the metro area. I chaired the stadium authority. We built Ford Field in Comerica Park. And then I got elected a Wayne County prosecutor. And I was serving as prosecutor when the big hospital system in Detroit, the Detroit Medical Center, was headed for bankruptcy. It had lost $100 million a year for 5 years. 8 hospital systems. And the board voted to close the Seton Hospital, close Huckle Hospital, close the Carmanis Cancer Hospital, and it seemed like it was hopeless. And I was a prosecutor. I was minding my own business. And they called one day, the board did, and said, we want you to be the CEO of the Detroit Medical Center. And I said, guys, don't you want somebody from the medical field to do that? And they said, well, we had a doctor, but he's the one that lost $100 million a year for 5 years. We actually think we need somebody from outside healthcare to change the way things are done. And I thought, what will happen to the city if these hospitals close? Receiving Hospital saw 100,000 patients a year in the emergency room, most on Medicaid or uninsured. Where were those folks going to go? At Hustle, they delivered 5,000 babies a year, many of them on risk. Where were those moms going to go? So I said to the board, I'll take the job on one condition. You have to stop the closing of the hospitals for 6 months. I'm not coming to close hospitals. I actually think these hospitals can be saved. And it turned out they didn't have anybody else willing to take the job, so they had to agree to the 6-month delay. And so those early months, Mary Kramer's here who used to cover this at Cranes, I go through the hospitals and all the employees would say to me, are you going to save my job? You're going to save my job. And I had to say to them, I can't save the job. Nobody can save your job except satisfied patients. If we're treating people well and they're coming back, we'll be hiring. But if we don't change, there isn't anything I can do to help. And they said, well, it's not our fault. The feds don't pay us enough. The state doesn't pay us enough. The suburban hospitals steal all the good paying patients. It's not our fault that we're broke. And I said, really? Let me tell you what I know. Every time I walk into one of your emergency room waiting rooms, it's 3 hours to see a doctor, sitting on plastic chairs like you are for 3 hours. I said, is somebody making them sit on those chairs? I said, well, you don't understand, running a hospital is really complicated. I said, well, we're going to find out. And so one of the suburban hospitals had announced a 30-minute guarantee. And I said to the folks, I don't want Detroit to be second best. I want to have the highest standard of care at the Detroit hospital. And this one of the ER doctors said to me sarcastically, what do you want from us, 29 minutes? I said, yeah, I want 29 minutes. It started as a joke. We tore the process apart. We fixed the registration process, which turned out to be easy. Turns out, once you register somebody, you get them back in and they need an MRI or an X-ray. And when your imaging operation isn't ready to go and the radiologists start reading, your exam room backs up for hours. If they need a lab test to make a diagnosis, if your lab is moving the test results, your exam room backs up for hours. If you're sick and you're being admitted to the floor, but they can't turn over the beds on the floor, your exam room is backed up for hours. What I learned is if you ever walk in to an ER waiting room and it's screwed up, you're in a screwed up hospital. But I had everybody tear apart their piece of the system. And 4 months later, the hospital system everybody thought was going to go bankrupt and close, we announced DOC's 29-minute ER guarantee. Our doctor will see you in 29 minutes or less, or we gave you 2 tickets to the Detroit Tigers game. So it was 2004, and the Tigers lost 104 games that year. Mike English made me a great deal on those tickets. But everybody got so focused on doing their jobs. And when we started, 95% of the patients got seen in 29 minutes or less. People came back in huge numbers. The cash turned positive. We could fix cardiology. We could fix neurosurgery in 9 years. DMC grew from 11,000 employees to 14,000 employees. And during the Great Recession, we were the only hospital system in Southeast Michigan that didn't lay anybody off. We were still growing. And while DMC was growing, the city of Detroit around us was headed toward bankruptcy. Half the streetlights were out. Ambulances didn't show up for an hour. The parks were closed and the grass was grown all summer long. Highest unemployment rate, highest homicide rate in America. And I would, at lunchtime, sit in the hospital cafeteria, and the Detroit employees would sit with me. And they said, Mike, you got to run from here. And I said, run from here? I live in Livonia. And they said, well, you can move. And I said, okay, well, we have a deeper issue. There's no place in America that has a deeper history of racial division than Detroit and suburbs. This is an 83% African American city, and we haven't had a white candidate for mayor in 40 years. And my employees kept saying, you don't understand. If the people of the city got to know you the way we do, you would win, and it wouldn't even be close. And I'm looking at what's happening and say, I can give this a try. So I announced I was winning and running for mayor. And it drew a fair amount of laughter that the white guy thought he could run for mayor of Detroit. But I campaigned in a way nobody saw. I did what I did with Victor here today. I said to people, invite me to your house, I'll show up. And a lady would call, and she'd say, come to my house on Tuesday night. I'd drive myself, I'd sit in the living room, sometimes the neighbors had their folding chairs, and we'd sit around and talk. And one of the neighbors said, come to my house next week. And this is an interesting thing. As you can imagine, most nights I was the only white guy in the room. And you can feel the difference. Some of the conversations were very powerful. To talk to folks who had grown up in the South and talk about their lifetime experience and the way they had been treated, discriminated against, and how hard it was for them to think about voting for a white man. And we talk about the things we want. The most interesting thing happens. When you sit in people's homes and you break bread with them, everything that divides us fades to the background. And what we have in common comes forward. And a mom would say to me, this house I'm living in, that abandoned house next door, my kids and I go to sleep every night, afraid it's going to catch fire and spread to our house. Can you do something about it? My 9-year-old daughter can't ride her bike down the street because of the drug house that's down the block. I don't really care what color you are. Can you do something about it? And what I pointed out to them was this, that in all the years of city decline, I'm watching these guys who get reelected. I said, how can you get reelected when you have no accomplishments? And then I realized, you know how I got elected in Detroit those days? You were the most skilled person at blaming somebody else for the problem. Okay? It was the business community's fault, it was the suburbs' fault, it was Lansing's fault. Whoever was the best at blaming somebody else got elected. But it didn't solve any problems. And so I would say, as I said in those living rooms, Detroit's turnaround starts with the healing. That if you're voting for me, you're voting for a completely different kind of city. We're going to put us versus them politics behind it. If you vote for me, you vote for a city where everybody's welcome, where it will not matter if you are black or brown or white. It will not matter if you are Christian or Jewish or Muslim. It will not matter if you are gay or straight. If you're voting for me, you're voting for a city where everybody's welcome and everybody's valued. I did 250 house parties, and I finished every one of the 250 by saying that. And the political people said, that'll never work. You can't be talking like that. Well, when the results came in, I carried 92% of the precincts in the city. The politicians were tearing each other apart. But the average person, they just wanted their problem solved. And so I worked really hard to build partnerships with city council. And I came into a city with a 20% unemployment rate. And a whole lot of folks in high school degrees who wanted to work hard, who had no job opportunities. And everything starts by being able to support your family. And so I went and I sat with Mary Barrow at GM, I sat with Bill Ford, I sat with Sergio Marchioli, who ran Fiat Chrysler, and I said to them, it's been 20 years since we've had a new manufacturing facility in Detroit. I don't need charity, but I want to compete. The next time you guys change models and have a new parts plant, I want Detroit to get the first shot at studying that plant and tell me what it would take. And so they said, okay, well, first thing is we need vacant land. And I said, I'm your guy. And they got plenty of vacant land. They said, well, we need a very fast permitting process. And the way the city of Detroit permitting takes, it takes months to get it approved. We're not going to build this. I said, okay, I'm a 29-minute ER guy. I'm going to build you the fastest permitting process in the state of Michigan. And I did. And they said, but the other thing we want is we don't want to get dragged in front of the city council and beat up for what we're doing as business goals. We can go to the suburbs. And I said, you know what, that's a good point. So I brought each of the 9 city council members in. And I said, I actually think we do a great job today. But here's what I think we should agree to up front. I don't agree with writing checks to companies to come here. This nonsense about we're going to offer you $250 million for your plant here, I don't agree with that. We're not doing it. But I tell you what, if somebody is going to build a vacant land to bring us jobs, we should discount the new taxes they're paying as they build. Every one of the 9 city council members said, I agree with that. We were unified. We went and got the first company, Flexigate, we made trucks for Ford parts. Shad Khan shows up in my office. He's also the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars football. He shows up in my office and says, I don't know why I'm here, but Bill Ford said I had to talk to you first. I got 30 days to pick a site for my 500-employee plant. Put him in the car. He took him to Van Dyke. I said, here's your site. We got it permitted fast. We got it built fast. City council approved it with no problem. We went to hire 500 people, and 16,000 Detroiters showed up with a line. And then everybody said, well, the city of Detroit can be a place to build. And then we landed 700 employees in the Weir Seating plant, 500 employees in the Detroit Dashboard plant. And then, Chrysler announced they were going to build a 5,000 employee Jeep facility. And it was on its way to South Carolina. And that's what they've been building. And I went and said to Sergio, I just want a chance to compete. And he said, I don't know how you're going to do this. I got 500 acre sites on cornfields. How are you going to do this? I said, well, actually, I think I can close St. Jean Street. I think you can buy that butt plant site. I think I can put this together. He said, Mike, knock yourself out, but we're ready to go. They cut to 3, and we were 3rd. They cut to 2, and we were 2nd. But I convinced their HR department that building on some cornfield somewhere would be really hard to fill 5,000 jobs. And their HR department says, go see if Mike can buy the land. We can fill the jobs in Detroit. We acquired the land, and I made them a deal. And this is the plan we rebuilt the city. I said, I'll buy this land for you. Here's what I want in exchange. I want you to offer Detroiters the first interview. That is, I want you to interview Detroiters first. We don't have enough qualified Detroiters. Hire anybody you want. But we're going to do this for you. It's so that our residents get a shot. They said, how's that going to work? I said, I'm going to give you a list of qualified people. And if I don't give you enough qualified people, hire whoever you want. He said, we can look at that. And so we did fairs and churches across the city, 200 people at a time. And I would be in a room and I'd say, you're going to be on your feet all day. You're going to have to pass a drug test. You're going to have to pass an 8th grade math and reasoning test. When I got to that, folks were like, all right, can I talk about an 8th grade test? It's been a while since I was in school. And I said, okay, we're going to set up tutoring for you before Chrysler College, right? So I go to Chrysler HR. And just you can sense that what you had to do for a state line. I said, okay, would you give me the test and want to set up tutoring so by the time they come, they can pass the test? He said, I'm not going to let you teach to the test. Are you crazy? And so we give me the test, which was kind of an end. But I had this woman in the economic development department who was enormously resourceful. And that day, she went over to the Jeep plant and applied for a job in the assembly line. And she came back and she says, I have good news. I said, what's that? She says, I got an offer from John at Chrysler. I said, so you passed the math and reasoning test. She says, not only that, she says, it turns out it's not Chrysler's test. They got a firm from Kentucky that administers the test for them. I said, really? She says, yeah. And the Kentucky firm takes you clients, and the city of Detroit is the newest client. I have the test. And so now we did these sessions. We had people who sample tests, and if they didn't do well, we set up tutoring at churches on Tuesday and Thursday nights. And I was one night going over the grading of tests, and I looked up at the back of the church, and the HR director for Chrysler was walking in the church. And he looks at what I'm doing, and he picks up the test, and he's got this look on his face. I said, "You better take the meeting." I went out the hall. He says, "You got my test." And I said, "Actually, it's a Kentucky firm's test." He didn't think that was funny. And I said, "How mad are you?" He said, "At first I was mad." He said, "But now I realize what you're doing and the dedication of these employees who want to get tutoring. You're going to save me $1 million in HR costs." They ended up taking 1,000 UAW transfers, people in the system who had a right, and they hired 4,000 employees. All 4,000 employees were residents of the city of Detroit. $60,000 with benefits to start. This is the way we rebuilt our city. And so today, if I'm in Detroit, I've been in Detroit the last 3 or 4 years. Okay? It looks a little different now, doesn't it? This is what happens when a mayor and council pull together. We rebuilt the riverfront. We've got $10 billion of investment. We cut the unemployment rate down. We've got the fewest homicides since the 1960s. We healed our divisions and rebuilt history. And last year, we led the state of Michigan in population growth, first time in a while. Grand Rapids is a big state, so you guys are second now. But 7,000 people, but you know what we didn't have? We didn't have parents in school age children. That's not who's moving in. Our superintendent of school board are doing fine. Is their leadership. When you look at what's happening in the state to our public school system, and of course, the mayor's not in charge of the schools in Detroit, but 60% of third graders in the state of Michigan do not read at grade level. That's not Detroit. 60% of 8-year-olds in the state cannot read at grade level. And it's been dropping for 20 years. Republicans and Democrats keep fighting back and forth about standards and rules, and we're now 44th in the country in reading. And I said, somebody has to deal with this. And then, on affordable housing, they tried to build 6,000 affordable housing units as they go around the state. Most places in the state, young people went out because they can't afford to live in their community. I go to Marquette. They can't fill entry-level hospital jobs because the young people can't afford to live in the community. And the state of Michigan has really done nothing to help affordable housing. We did it on our own in Detroit. I got to do something about this. But when I started to spend time in Lansing, I've never seen a toxic environment between the Republicans and Democrats so bad. There was something about this evenly divided legislature. 56 Democrats, 54 Republicans, 20 Democrats, 18 Republicans. Everything has been about, does this bill help you get the majority? Does this bill help you keep the majority? And solving problems in favor of drag. And the more time I spent, the more I looked at this and I said, if I run for governor as a Democrat, I got all the same problems Mr. Whitmer's dealing with right now. All the Republicans line up against you try to beat them in their state Route 6 Senate races. And it's always a fact that the Democratic Party doesn't support you. And they won't work with each other. And I looked at that and said, and even if I succeeded, if 2 or 4 years I got some things done, when the Republicans are behind me, it's just not doing it. That's all that's happening. Our economic development policies change every 2 years in this state because the Republicans and Democrats swing back and forth. And then, as you probably gathered, I'm kind of obsessed about metrics. And I thought, I wonder if there's a solution where we could have a Michigan plan. You know what it takes to teach third graders to read? Mississippi's going from 49 in the country to 9. What do? They teach the third graders phonics. They have them in small class sizes in the early grades. They have tutors for the kids who are falling behind. They don't change the curriculum every year. None of that's Republican or Democrat. Thinking, could we build Michigan solutions? And when I looked at the data, and Gallup has asked the question every year since the 1980s, do you consider yourself a Republican, a Democrat, or independent? And across the country this year, 27% Democrat, all-time low. 27% Republican, all-time low. 43% independent, all-time high. The answer's hiding in plain sight, but nobody's seen it before. And so I started out a year ago, and I just said this, that I want to run not to be the Republicans' governor or the Democrats' governor, but to be your governor, to work with people of goodwill in both parties. If you want to vote for a Democratic House, that's great. If you want to vote for a Republican Senate, that's great. I actually think if we could build these solutions, Republicans and Democrats together, every election is the most important election in history, right? Because we've agreed on these things. And so you've seen the polling numbers started out at 15%. I said, the independent can't win. I've been going around and doing these meetings. Then by summer, I got to 21%. And they started to say, that must be a blip. Then by the end of last year, I was at 26%. And then if you saw the polling last week, I'm at 30, James is at 29, and Benson's at 28. And I'm just getting started. Because every place I go in the state, whether I'm in Pontiac or Grand Rapids, or I'm in farms, people are getting tired of the two parties constantly fighting each other. And so I'm here today to hear about your community, the Boston Square neighborhood, the city of Grand Rapids. And I want to talk to you about what things going on in Grand Rapids. What do you like about how things are going? What don't you like? And if the governor came in to solve one problem and make the quality of life a little bit better, what would you like to see the next governor do? And so what I really like is, whoever would like to talk, and tell me your name, tell me where you're from, and let's talk about what's on your mind. And I really want to take this time to get to know your community. So go ahead, Cassidy, he's got the microphone there.
Thanks for the introduction, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm 34. I moved from the east side of the city as well. So actually, my family grew up over in Greenview, over off the road, just on the edge of Dearborn, Detroit. So basically, been in the city and seen it. And I wanted to thank you firsthand for what you did for the city and just being pragmatic about the problems that we're facing the city and the region. I'm currently living in Kentwood right now. And one of the things that I noticed being a young person is that I noticed number one thing, and you've mentioned this countless times on shows and your news clippings, is the number one export isn't jobs, it's young people. And so I come to you today, and I would like to know more about what triggered you to say to young people, what kind of jobs you think that can work to bring them in, because I think a lot of the jobs that could work aren't necessarily in tech or in sales, but I think that if we focus on trades, focus on getting people who want to be professionals, and focus on making those things accessible for young people and the kids in school now, I think we're going to see boom in the state. We've got more than enough qualified medical professionals and automotive professionals in the state. So I hope you keep it up, and I wish you best luck.
So thank you. So you've seen the numbers. The state of Michigan leads the country. The percentage of our residents under the age of 30 move out. And every community I go to, I sit with young people. And I don't want to leave here report, I want to ask them. There are 3 issues that drive your decisions. One is, can I afford to live there? Second is, what's the quality of life like? Which in most places, the quality of life is good. And third is, do you have the jobs in the future for them? You've got to do all 3 of those things. You've got to have a job opportunity, you've got to have a place to afford to live, and you've got to have a quality of life. In Detroit, we went to work and we built that. We built the housing, we brought in the tech jobs, the Microsoft, and Google's, the new lab that has 150 mobility startups. One thing we've got to do as a state is we have to make the commitment to bring the tech jobs of the future here. And we are falling behind on it. We've had success in Grand Rapids, we've had success in Detroit. We haven't had success in a lot of other places. And what does that mean? So now, the last couple of years, I've been spending time in Silicon Valley saying to those companies, what would it take for you to bring your next tech company to Detroit? And is it the state of Michigan? I guess I'm saying, no other way says, you don't have an economic development policy. Okay, it's just the MEDC in 2012, 2013, MEDC's economic development policy was mega credits. They give the auto companies good credits to keep them here. Then Rick Steiner came in and he said those credits were too much, cancel it. He said, we're going to do gardening. He basically canceled all the credits. Then he realized he went too far. And we passed something transformation boundary, which I partnered with Grand Rapids. It's what's doing the Fulton Market project here. It's what's doing the Lansing high-rise residence there. What's doing the Hudson building in Detroit. And it's the Detroit policy. We'll give you discounts only as you build. And that was working. And then a couple of battery plants went to Kentucky and Tennessee and the third panic and passed something called SOAR. And they started giving away $250 million to companies that hadn't built anything. And when that backfired, they canceled SOAR. They canceled the transformational brownfields. Now they talk about canceling LABC. Now you tell me, you're a tech company thinking about, am I going to build in Columbus or Indianapolis or Michigan or Miami? What are you going to do? You think we have long-term stability? So here's what we're going to do. We are going to do what I did in Detroit. We are going to create the environment where tech companies want to be located, where we support them. We are building, for example, a new university graduate school in Detroit in AI and tech that's going to help you with it. We are going to expand that out of affordable housing in the state. And we need to create a $500 million affordable housing fund in the state, which the state has not been involved in building that housing. And then quality of life. Right now, we're losing those jobs in Columbus, Ohio. I just can't get my mind around that. But the quality of life that we have in Michigan should be a huge competitive advantage. And that's why I spent 2 hours with your tech summit today at this afternoon, just talking through. You got some good companies here getting ready to go stage 2. Columbus and Indianapolis are knocking on the door, saying, when you go stage 2 and hire all your people, come on down here. We're going to have a clear economic development strategy that says Detroit, Michigan aren't going to compete with Austin, Texas, Miami. What we've done, what should be able to beat Ohio and Indiana. And we're going to keep our jobs and we're going to people here. What else have you noticed? Yes?
My name is John Vanderman Stewart. I've been an attorney in Wayne County for 45 years. I made a living getting along with the people at the foot of Woodward and Jefferson, right behind the Spirit of Detroit, that building. I practiced in front of Gerald Grossman. I happen to think you have the skill set of negotiating with people, unlike issuing a driver's license over the internet. But you have that practical experience of going one-on-one and negotiating. And I'm talking about the grand bargain. I'm talking about the whole bankruptcy situation. Now, in Traverse City, you were rated #1 at the Economic Forum for most effective. And then you started to talk about Governor Milliken, who was known for delicate compromise and consensus, our only governor over 14 years. Talking about state issues, is that the pattern that you will have to have with the recent budget that Governor Whitmer proposed of $89 billion, which speaks to the need for negotiation and posturing? And my last question is a softball. Welcome to the west side of the state. We own a centennial home in Holland, Michigan at 13th and College. We regularly go to Dimnet Chapel, where my mother graduated valedictorian with Holland High School. And the third most attended festival in the United States is Tulip Time. Third most attended. 5 years ago, my friend who I concurrently served with in the House of Representatives for 6 years, Gretchen Whitmer, she spoke at the governor's Tulip Time luncheon. She stood up and she said, I want to thank you for the 4 votes that I received from this side of the state. Well, you know what the Dutchman did? They canceled the Tulip Time Governor's Luncheon. Will you appear at that Tulip Time Luncheon? Will you find some wooden shoes? Will you speak to the west side of the state and talk about the pride that we have of our Dutch heritage and our ecumenical and ethnic pride? And we are enlightened. I do want to encourage you to know that. And I married a PPK, okay? She sat right down next to you, and she's really happy to support you. Presbyterian Preacher's Kid, if you know where that's coming from. I graduated from Eastern Michigan, Wayne State, and Michigan State.
So if I get invited to two-time luncheon, I will be there.
A round of applause on that.
I don't know if you're the official person. You're the first person to invite me to two-time luncheon. That's what you know. Okay, this is why I came out here. Other things, what's on your mind? Yes. Oh, go ahead, sorry. No, you were waiting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
For you with regards to your plans to protect and regulate, to appropriately fund public schools, and then lastly, how will you address civil rights and inclusion issues in the state of Michigan?
So those are three pretty major questions. So let me start with the first thing. Our public schools. When we passed proposal A in 1994 to raise the sales tax from 4 cents to 6 cents, the people of the state of Michigan were being told all that money to go to K-12. And it did for about 15 years, until the state ran into some budget problems. And they started grading the K-12 system. First, a couple $100 million. You know what they did this last year? They took $1.3 billion out of K-12 schools, and they moved it to all our other priorities in the state budget. At a time, we're 44th in the country in reading. And so the first thing we need to do is restore all the money back to K-12 that was promised. And my very first commitment in this campaign is it's going to take 5 years. We can't just move $1.3 billion. Over 5 years, I will move all $1.3 billion back into the public school system where it belongs. The second thing, though, is this: it's not all money. So what you had in this state was 12 years ago, every school in the state was graded A, B, C, D, F. And then the Democrats said, that's too mean, and they passed the law. And they graded every school green, yellow, red. I'm not making this up. The law. 2 years later, Snyder said green, yellow, red doesn't make any sense. And he passed the law, beats their lap, he was in the legislature there, and they graded every school in the state from top to bottom. Well, when they did that, they embarrassed the worst schools, and they started to close. So then in 2021, the Republicans came back in and said, you know what? ABCDF was a good idea. They reinstated ABCDF. And in 2023, the Democrats got the trifecta and they canceled ABCDF. You're a superintendent. You're a principal. You're a teacher. There's no accountability. What are you being held accountable for? And why do Republicans and Democrats have to change the standard every 2 years? And I'm saying, let's have a group of educators come in and establish a set of standards on how these children achieve. And as we put the money back in the schools, hold the principals and the superintendents accountable for producing results. I have spent time with the superintendent of Mississippi, who took Mississippi from 49 to 9th in the country. They put the money in, they focused on the kids, they held the principals accountable. These children can learn. We just have to give them the proper resources. That was your schools question. Tell me others. Great Lakes, I tell you what, I've been visiting a lot of these little harbor towns, Lexington, and go around. It is amazing how many of our harbors have grown in this state, how they're being neglected. It's the dumbest thing. You might be thinking you're being forgotten in Grand Rapids. You go to little Lexington, it's a town of 1,000 people, 100 showed up on a Tuesday night, much like this. And they're saying, we're ignored, we're forgotten here. What do you know about representing people like us? And I say, well, let me see, what do I know about representing people who felt ignored and forgotten? I said, I can take you to Detroit and introduce your mom with 3 kids on a block with 4 abandoned houses, no street lights, no parks, no police or fire. Okay? We didn't make excuses, we addressed the problems. Let's talk about how we fix them. And so one of the things I want to do is make a commitment to all those communities along Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, even at the top of Lake Superior. And each one of those small communities can be a vibrant community for itself. But the thing that sets us apart from the other Midwestern states is our fresh economy. It's our competitive advantage. We're going to protect it and we're going to take advantage of it. And then the third question is about civil rights. What would you like to see the governor do?
Well, I think it's important to make sure that civil rights in the state of Michigan are protected and that we are a part of the solution and not the problem. I think where we sit with our federal government is kind of turn this back on civil rights and issues that are very real for many people in our country, and that we have to do our part. And so I'd like to see that we are making intentional strides to protect, not, it has saddened me to see state agencies get rid of DEI programs. Well, why? Why are we doing that? When in fact, the people who are the benefactors of that is mostly women. So why are we getting rid of those type of programs? Why are we not supporting inclusion? Why are we turning away people who have LGBTQ plus concerns or identity issues that they identify one way versus the way you think they should, and then we're saying, no, you're not welcome here. How do we address that? What are your issues to make sure that Black people in this state receive the economic investments that they need to make sure that they are part of the growth, which is not definitely and permanently locked out of that?
So, well, you could have been sitting in the living room with me in 2013. I mean, you think about this. I got elected mayor of Detroit, not by the 200,000 people who moved out. I got elected by the people who stayed. And they damn well expected me to fight for their rights. And what we did over 12 years in making sure Detroiters got jobs, in making sure the neighborhoods got investment. We started something called Motor City Match, where we did $50,000 grants to 10 companies every quarter to start businesses. And we did it for 22 straight quarters. Now, 200 companies employing 2,000 people. Overwhelmingly residents of the city of Detroit. I'm really proud of the fact that not only did I get elected last time with 75% of the vote, I left office with an 84% approval rating. I fought every single day to make sure the residents of our city got every opportunity possible. And in the LGBT community, I fully supported the extension of the Elliott Larson Act to have LGBT rights. And every June, I raise the pride flag at City Hall to celebrate and deliver a message that every single person is valued and protected in the city of Detroit. That that's just who I am. It's who I've been through the whole time that I've been there. So you got 3 great questions. Go ahead. Yes. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a school guy. A lot of discussion these days about taxes.
Yeah.
Property tax.
Yeah.
You weigh in on that at all?
So, you know what? It is so much easier for a politician to make promises than progress. So I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you what I did. The last 3 years, the city of Detroit cut our property taxes 5 mils. Now I started because I had to add 350 cops. I had to rebuild the parks. The early years, I built up the services. But as people came back and revenues came back, we cut 1 mil 3 years ago, 1 mil 2 years ago, 3 mils last year. We led the state of Michigan in property tax cuts. And I will say the same thing to you, that if you know how to manage your finances, you have got to protect the essential services first. I'm going to put the money back in K-12 first. But once we're there, I think the people in this state deserve tax relief. And all you have to do is look at my history. Property taxes in particular in the state are too high and they need to be addressed. But I'm going to fix the services first and the taxes second. I know some people are going the opposite direction. Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor, welcome to West Michigan. Pete Wills, former Chief of Staff to State Senator Jeff Hansen. In my 20 years working in the legislature, I was very fortunate to be and had the honor of working with you specifically and Jeff on the Detroit Public School Reform legislation. That really was the most poignant issue that I had an honor to work on. Unfortunately, the Senate version wasn't able to be enacted, but I appreciate and thank you for running. And very few leaders that I have seen in my 20 years in the legislature, and you're number one. But that Detroit Public School Reform issue is something that I feel very honored to work with you on. So thank you.
Yeah, we're going to go back and finish the job. We're going to put some accountability in the schools. I ran into a little bit of trouble with a couple of folks in this part of the state, actually. Go ahead. Go ahead. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Hey, I'm a volunteer with Rank My Vote, which is the chatted for a second earlier about the campaign for ranked choice voting in Michigan. I'm not paid or on staff or anything. I just really believe in ranked choice voting. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for running as independent. I love that we have a serious candidate as an independent for governor. Ranked choice voting would really help independents win. I really believe that. So, what are your thoughts on ranked choice voting?
So, in 1980, I graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in political science. And my senior thesis was why there should be ranked choice voting in presidential primaries. I was way ahead of my time. But obviously, it's not going to be an issue that's going to be on the ballot this year. And I'm just going to have to run and win the old-fashioned way. So it won't be an issue for 2026. But I'm going to have to just, I'll win the old-fashioned way. It'll be all right. Go ahead. Who's got the microphone? Okay, so Cassidy, you're like Cassidy to pick the speakers with the microphone. Go ahead.
Thanks for being here. Just a real generic question. How do you feel about the solution that came up for road funding by the governor and the legislature? What, if anything, would you do differently?
You know, it was a step in the right direction. Although I'm concerned about the funding of the school side, it needs to be protected. But here's what happened. The governor, of course, ran on fixed dam roads. She couldn't get into the legislature. So she borrowed $3 billion to basically do the state trunk lines. Now, if you live where I do in southeastern Michigan, you saw cones and barrels everywhere. You thought all the roads had been fixed. There was nobody in city and county roads in Houston. You walk to the rural areas of the state, they are pattern now about the fact they had been left behind. So I think they took a step in the right direction to fund the city and the county roads. But again, this is the kind of stuff, you know, they go make a late night deal and carve out a political deal. We should really be thinking about this stuff. Electric vehicles are growing slower than people projected, but they're still growing every year. Now think about if you're comparing the gas tax. Every year that goes by, you've got fewer and fewer vehicles on the road funding the gas tax. Everybody should have sat in the room and said people should pay for the roads in proportion to how they use them. Let's get a solution. Instead, they did a midnight deal, they taxed the marijuana wholesalers, and guys woke up in the morning and found themselves with a 24% tax, as opposed to the way I'm going to do things, which is bring folks in the room and say, let's come up with a fair solution for the long run. But I think it was a step in the right direction, and I'm glad the governor got at least some of it done, but it isn't a solved problem. We've got more to do. So did you like it or you didn't like it? Yeah. Yeah, they'll keep half a number of us. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for being here. My name is Russell. I live here in Grand Rapids. I have a business here in the Boston Square neighborhood. Live on the west side of Grand Rapids.
What's your business?
North Coast Guitar Company. We build and repair guitars for hidden instruments. Shameless plug.
How long have your business been here?
I've been in this neighborhood for 3 years. I've been doing this for 26 years.
Oh, good for you. Okay.
I have 3 questions for you. They're kind of follow-ups off of what we've spoken to already. You've talked about metric-driven policy, but there can sometimes be problems between metric and outcome, because metric can sometimes be somewhat subjective, instead of possibly looking at the outcomes-based solutions. Towards the protection of Great Lakes, what would your policy be on data centers and them coming into the state? On the civil rights, following up on civil rights, there's the Michigan Department of Civil Rights has been somewhat underfunded and is having a hard time getting through a backlog of cases, specifically here in Grand Rapids. I think there are 13 that they're looking into in Grand Rapids, the Grand Rapids Police Department. So I'm wondering about your ideas about funding for the Department of Civil Rights. And then on property taxes, you were talking about a decrease down the road. Is there a plan that you have for when that decrease happens, how to offset how school funding is done in the state.
Or you could not take it from the schools. There's no question about that. So let me start with data centers. And we need to have an honest conversation about data centers. Okay? The tech jobs of the future require data centers. That's just the truth. And I said, I'm telling you, I spent time in Silicon Valley, and when I asked them about Michigan, here's what they tell me: that the investment that's going into AI companies are required in data centers. That's where the great majority of the investment is. All we know about Michigan is the data center situation is chaotic. Data centers consume a huge amount of energy. What we know about Michigan is every time you guys have a storm, you have blackouts. Now think about the message that sends to companies nationally. And every week in New Lab, where I have 150 tech startups in Corktown, I've got the Jobs Ohio people from Columbus knocking on the doors of our businesses, saying when it's time to expand, come on down to Columbus. Our energy is solid, our data centers are solid, our support programs are solid. But here's the thing about data centers. The governor has to step up and take a lead and say there is going to be a single standard for the state of Michigan. And there are three factors. One is, if data centers are done wrong, it is going to drive up the electric rates for the community to spend that. That cannot be allowed to happen. You have got to have an airtight agreement that all the power that's being built is going to be paid by the developer. You're talking about Oracle, Microsoft, Google. These are the biggest companies in the world. They can afford to pay for the power and not have it be spread to the community. So we need airtight agreements that those companies pay full cost on the power. Second, the early data centers, the data centers are essentially giant buildings with computers. You've got one here in Grand Rapids, and the old furniture headquarters at that pyramid. It's been there for 10 years. People don't realize it's there. But some of the early data centers, they brought water in from the rivers and lakes, cooled the computers, put it back into the environment, and raised the temperature. You can do enormous environmental damage by using water that way. We have to demand that the systems are closed-loop refrigerated systems, that you keep the water inside and you pay the money to cool it, and you do not damage the environment. And third, the local community has to support it. You cannot be jamming these local communities. Now, out here where I am, Van Buren is embracing one. That's great. You've got other cities that is being forced on people, and they react very badly. And here's the first thing I do as governor. I'm going to put a legal team in the governor's office that's going to back your community. So I'm not sure what the legal status is in Lowell Township, but in many places, you've got some part-time township attorney who's now negotiating against Microsoft's corporate lawyer. Okay? And you're wondering, can we protect them? I want the governor to send in a first-class legal team sitting side by side with Lowell, saying, here's what the other deals are, here's how we structure this. If you want it, we'll help you make a good deal. If you don't want it, we will help you stop it. We will be on your side as a local community. I think the governor needs to set a single standard for data centers, provide the legal backing to the communities, and then make sure it applies to everybody. And so when I'm the governor, assuming that people in the state decide to do that, the whole data center study process is going to be a lot more transparent. I'm watching these deals pop out of back rooms with non-disclosure agreements, and you wonder why the local community is mad. Of course they're mad. They're being kept in the dark, and these things are being sprung on. That's not the way you come into a community. That was the first one. The second one, I have not heard that about the staffing of the Civil Rights Department. My former police chief, James White, was at one point the head of the Civil Rights Department. So I'm going to have a conversation with him tomorrow and get myself up to speed on that. That's why I love doing these things. Because you are the first one to raise that issue. How far is the backlog, did you say?
I don't know how far. I know for Grand Rapids, it's from 2018 or 2019.
Really? Yeah, I mean, in what sense are rights being adjudicated? It's taking 6 years to get a decision. Okay, so if that's the case, I'll deal with that. That has to be fixed. And I'm sorry, what was your third question?
Around taxation and replace the norm for taxes on property.
Oh, for sure. There's no way. So here's what I did in Detroit, is when I first got elected we had income tax revenues of $200 million a year. You've seen all the businesses that are coming in, 30,000 jobs. We're now making more than $400 million a year in income taxes because of all the growth and all the people working. And so I took a part of that growth in income tax and I used it to start reducing the property. I did. The Voice of Council voted 9-0 to support it. And so we took the most unfair part of our tax system, our property tax system, and we moved off it. Nobody in 50 years in this state has thought through this tax system. How much is property, how much is income, how much is corporate, how much is sales, how much is real estate transfer tax? Nobody's thought this through. We just grafted one thing on after another. One thing I'd like to do is bring everybody in a room and say, if we were going to start a state today and have a fair tax system, how might it work? And see if we can't get to a solution. But one way or another, the property taxes have to come out. Go ahead. Who's got the microphone? Pass it to Joe. Go ahead.
Good evening.
So tell me your name and where you're from.
I'm from Cedar Springs.
Okay.
It's like actually Solon Township that they're looking to put a data center in.
Okay. How's it being received there?
I'm sorry?
How is it being received there?
98% against.
Really? I guess. Well, I think it's 98%. Yes, that was really surprising.
It's all farmland.
Yeah. And it changed the character of the community. Yeah. I assume you're one of the 98%.
I'm part of the 98%.
Okay. All right.
The other thing is, you mentioned ranked choice voting, which I collected signatures for the petition for that. But also, I was wondering about what your thought is on just the SAVE Act. Yeah. That's what it is, the SAVE Act.
Okay, tell me the SAVE Act.
The SAVE Act where they're trying to get so that you have to go in and get a new, you have to be registered for.
Oh, yeah. Michigan's elections are being run well. You know, the interesting thing is, people, you know, the reason I'm running an election with the Secretary of State's in charge. Everybody should be nervous, I should be, right? But the truth is, elections are done by 1,200 local clerks in cities and townships. That's who actually comes to vote. And Michigan has a great tradition of protecting it. So I don't see a need to change that.
They want to make it so that my married name would not be, because I had a married name instead of being I was born with, that I would be able to vote at this office.
And I'm saying to you, I believe Michigan's election laws are good. The elections have been done properly, and we would disagree with that. I saw it firsthand in Detroit. I think we won 5 different lawsuits at 5 different courts challenging the elections in Detroit, where we thought we were doing everything totally properly in the life. So I'm not in favor of these changes. I think the system is working.
And President Trump also said that he wanted to make mail-in voting.
Yeah, mail. Who here believes you should have the right to mail-in voting? Okay? Anybody here think you should go? Okay, so it seems like there's pretty clear consensus on that. All right, who else got questions? Go ahead, who's next, Jesse?
Hello, Christopher Hodgson from Western Michigan University School of Social Work, and I'm an urban specialist. And at all metrics, we moved the needle in Detroit, we moved it greatly. Now Detroit's experiencing hypergrowth, crime's come down substantially. It's just a wonder, it's an understatement, remarkable what you've done. My question to you is, how about other communities throughout Michigan? What's your game plan to help bring those communities back to life, first of all? And secondly, we need more community centers throughout Michigan.
Yeah.
Those two things, can you point that out?
So I think community centers are a local decision, but you're asking a great question. So I go up to Marquette, and they have a vision for what they'd like to do off of Northern Michigan University and their healthcare side. I said, I want the state of Michigan and MEDC to support your vision for your community. I go to Petoskey, and they have a completely different vision on tourism. And I want the state to support them. And you come to Grand Rapids, and they'll have a different version. I think MEDC's job is to support the local cities and counties in their economic development visions for their community, give them the kind of expertise that they need. I never felt like I had a lot of support from NBC. I've talked to the Grand Rapids Economic Development folks, and a number of them have said to me they haven't felt they've had that support. On the other hand, some other smaller communities feel like they have. But what we're going to do is build an NBDC that gives you the resources to have the kind of vision you have for your community. I think about, I talked about Motor City Match, which is just so cool. I went to the foundations when I first started because I had lots of folks in Detroit who said, I got a great business plan. I got the drive, I'm smart enough. I don't have a family member who can write me a check to start my company. And so we did this competition where we gave out $500,000 a quarter, basically 10 grants of $50,000. First quarter, 300 companies sent in business plans. And so we picked the 10 winners, but we did it every single quarter. So if you lost this quarter, but you were weak on finance, you could find a finance partner coming back in the third quarter. And I think, as I mentioned before, there are now 200 small businesses in Detroit employing 2,000 people. 200 kind of people pull plywood off a vacant window. 70% owned by residents of the city of Detroit. Now tell me that we don't have talent in Grand Rapids, in Clare, in Alpena, in a lot of communities who want to stay in their community, but don't have the family money to start. Couldn't we have Michigan Match? Okay? The cost per job is a fraction of what these cities have been spending, and you've got a small business long term. These are the kinds of things that I want to work on to create an environment so that entrepreneurs say, Michigan is the place I want to be. My state supports my aspirations. Does that make sense? Do you think there will be opportunities out there for small business people to take advantage of that?
Not just that, I would say, but like count, but follow up. I would say not just there, but and I didn't cut you off there, but thinking about bringing that talent to more disadvantaged communities.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm going to go with Cassie and the microphone, so ready to start. Go ahead.
Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Heine Gant Jordan. I'm a small business owner in Greenville. I've been 28 years.
What's your business?
I'm sorry?
What is your business?
Samaria J. Salon.
Okay.
And what we have seen, the increase in our utility bills. Yeah. And we know they're being imposed on us and will be continue to increase each year. Yeah. What are your thoughts or your plans? There's no plan for us to help us reduce our carbon footprint, right? The resources aren't there. And so, is there a plan, or what are your thoughts about it? And is there a way that you can infiltrate this? And
we have not a bill.
And what is your relationship with utility companies? Because I know they back a lot of our political people, and they buy into it. So I want to do it.
Yeah, they do. So DTE has always been a supporter of mine. They also wrote a $500,000 check to the Democratic Party and a $500,000 check to the Republican. And you know what I did in Detroit? I took 200 acres of vacant land in the neighbor's pick, and the city of Detroit is building solar power. That city-run solar power to power all 137 city buildings, including City Hall. What we need is more power in this state. I fully support bringing the Palisades nuclear plant back online. We're going to need it. We're going to need more natural gas. Coal obviously needs to go away. That's not even a conversation. We need to expand renewables. We need all of these. And we've got to make it easier to expand the power supply and get these rates down, because it is ridiculous the way electrical rates are going up. And the second thing I do is this. Every year, the utilities go in to the Public Service Commission to ask for rate hike. And part of their rate hike is for reliability, right? We get blackouts all the time. And so they say, we're going to invest money in reliability. I think that's great, but there ought to be accountability. I want to make that reliability increase in the rates based upon their actual performance. If we're going to put more money in to strengthen the grid, you should not be able to collect that rate increase unless you become more reliable. So I'd like to put direct accountability into it. But I'm open to other ideas because this is a big part of our future. We lost a couple of really important plants in Wisconsin because the utility rates were cheap. This is an issue for you as a homeowner, as a business owner, and it's an issue for Michigan's competitiveness. But we've got to find, it's going to be a lot of these different powers. People attacking solar, they're making a mistake. We do need solar. It shouldn't be imposed on the community over community's objection. But we have got to build more power. That's just the truth.
You are at a stable 30%. Practical political question. What can we do to help you get that additional 10%, such as educating straight ticket voters that they can vote for you as an independent?
You're asking great questions. This is an interesting thing. I'm not asking anybody to leave the party. And so in Detroit, I had 160 African American ministers stand out and endorse it. Now, as you may know, 93% of Detroit vote straight to the Democrat. Okay? And what they're all saying to their congregations is, we're going to vote straight to the Democrat and we're going to vote Mike as an independent. And this is something I have to educate folks on. Because in a primary, you can't vote Republican and Democratic primary, right? Spoil your ticket. But actually in November, on that straight ticket circle, that's only a preference. You can fill in straight ticket Republican, straight ticket Democrat, but then choose somebody else. And so there's going to be, in Detroit, a whole lot of education. You can vote straight ticket Democrat, and vote for Mike, and the votes all count. There's some rural areas they started vote straight ticket Republican and vote for Mike. And I see that, but it's starting to build. It's amazing how mad these farmers are. But you're right, John, and I was spending a lot of time in September and October educating people and saying to them, I'm not asking you to leave your party. I think the party is to work together to actually get results.
So we have until November 3 to get that 10%.
Yeah, right. I'm going to try to get a little before that. But again, what else do you do? Follow me on social media. Share this stuff with your friends. If I post it, it's one thing. You share it with your friends, it's something else. My petitions are there. And I do anticipate that the Secretary of State's going to scrutinize my petitions. So I'm going to turn in so many more than the minimum that nobody's tempted to mess around. So, and if you're willing to help us gather petitions, we've got petition packets here because there's requirements to gather them from all parts of the state. So if you go out of here saying, I want to help, please help with petitions, share with your friends, and I'll be back again and again and again in the town hall. When you see me come back in the town hall, if you sign up one of the cards, we'll let you know where you're coming, and you can invite your friends out. Bring the skeptics. They just come out and listen to them. I think some people coming in here, they might be a little skeptical. Some of you might believe it's skeptical, but I want the skeptics to come and listen. Can this independent actually win? But how does it sound? Does this independent sound like it might work?
Absolutely. Yep.
Go ahead, yeah.
With your medical experience, what, 250,000 people now have been sort of left behind with the ACA issues in Washington.
Yeah.
Come January,
Yeah.
you have any
I do.
that you would address?
I do. So here's the interesting thing. So the feds have put a requirement to continue to get your Medicaid benefits starting in January 2027. They call it a work requirement, but it actually says you can either work, you can take classes, or you can volunteer. We need to make sure every single person who's getting Medicaid today keeps that Medicaid. That's what I did for 9 years at DMC. If you are uninsured, you live sicker, you suffer more, and you die early. That's just the truth. And so what you're going to see me do is I'm going to reach out to every church and nonprofit in the state and say, let's set up volunteer programs where people can help so that if you've got somebody who doesn't have a job and wants to use their Medicaid, and we're going to create a little app that will work right on your phone, that you can put your hours in on the phone at your local church or your local nonprofit or your job training program. And I am going to do everything humanly possible to make sure every single person entitled to Medicaid keeps their Medicaid. That's a responsibility for all of us. And it's going to start January 2027. All right, what's next? Go ahead, yes.
Hi. I'm Tracy Olmstead, and now I'm an echo, okay. I'm Tracy Olmstead, and Russ's wife. I have a couple questions about housing. We need housing in West Michigan, specifically low-income housing.
Right.
And there are a lot of companies eager to take that on. But they can choose, and often do, to build in the 80 to 60% median income. And if you were to force them into a situation where they had to build for the 40 to 20% that is so desperately needed, that's rent control. So how can we balance that and still protect landlords? Because landlords need to make money. But how can we maybe adjust legislation or change law or zoning or whatever we need to do to help those two things meet in the middle? Second question is, we have a lot of people that work from home now. Yeah. I work from home, I love RTO. So there are a lot of us not going into the office anymore, a lot of offices not being used, and we're losing that income tax. My understanding is that Grand Rapids is going to have quite a deficit in a few years. What would your thoughts be on changing zoning or whatever we need to change to turn some of those office buildings into that housing that we need?
Yeah. So if you come to the city of Detroit, and I say this is the difference. It's a lot easier to promise something than to produce something. But you look at what I did in Detroit. I built 6,000 affordable housing units in the last 6 years. We converted office buildings for exactly the reason you said. We converted vacant school buildings. We took the empty storefronts, something in the upper residential area on top of commercial strips, and we filled in those. You have opportunities, and we took public land and made that available. What we did not have is help from the state of Michigan. So, on affordable housing, I talked about this bill, I bore you all to tears. Here's the bottom line. If you build some apartments and it costs $1,500 a month in rent, you're break even. But your neighbors can pay $1,000 a month, somebody has to pay that $500 difference. Otherwise, nobody's building. That's just the truth. And so in Detroit, we accessed all kinds of federal money. But then I went to the private foundations, and I got them to put up $50 million to help do some of that. And the city of Detroit did property tax credits to fill in some of the others. And all those things together, we solved this 6,000 times. The state of Michigan ought to have a $500 million gap funding pool to help fill in that gap. There is federal money available. You can do local property tax credits. But here's what I'm going to say when I set that up, is that in order to access it, your community has got to adopt building-friendly ordinances. I don't agree with overriding the ordinance, but if in Traverse City they say everything's going to be 1 acre lot and $1 million houses, that's okay, but you don't come to us and say the state of Michigan should subsidize that. In Detroit, we're changing the zoning, for example, where all our R2 lots can build 4 units per lot. And so I want to do 2 things at once. I want to have a model ordinance for local communities to ease the restrictions, not what the state's proposing. We're basically overriding local jurisdiction. I don't agree with that. But put in the incentives and change the local zoning, and we can build. There's no question about it. There's lots of developers who are ready to go, but it is so darn complicated right now. Developers to do it, it's so complicated. You gotta have a lawyer, you gotta hire a lobbyist, you gotta go to your city council, you gotta go to the state. We made it so darn hard to build. In Detroit, we simplified the process and made it easy. We didn't do that statewide. So nobody's gonna build affordable housing first now. Yes, okay.
I compliment you on what you just were talking about, all the converting those empty buildings into affordable. I've been doing that for a long time. I think there was a few years ago something going on in Grand Rapids that was doing for looking into that. I don't discuss that. But I just wanted to talk to you because I think we misguided people with what they can do when they vote.
Okay.
Because I worked as an election person, whatever they're calling them, and if you select like straight Democratic ticket and you cross over and put somebody else or governor, your ticket is voted.
It absolutely is not. You are absolutely wrong. State law is absolutely clear, it has been.
If you
If you fill in straight ticket Democrat and vote for an independent or Republican on an individual seat, that vote all counts. Always has been. That's the law.
I was watching it take down the issues.
Again, you haven't had an independent. People don't know this because you haven't had an independent before, right? So in a primary, you can't do both. In a general, you can vote straight ticket and then vote. It's just a preference. The straight ticket circle is just a preference. But I promise you, in September, October, because a lot of people don't know that, they haven't had an independent before. You're going to hear a lot of voter education in September, October. But I know what's going to happen in my home city of Detroit. Those folks are going to vote 90% plus straight Democrat, and they're going to vote for me. That's just what's going to happen. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
Let's take two more here. Go ahead.
So this popped up in my head as you were talking about data centers and things, and my mind somehow randomly went to automobiles. And it went to reforms, and it went to car insurance. Oh, the lovely car insurance in this state. And we thought we were 2 steps forward, 1 step back when Governor Whitaker passed those laws. And in the end, we realized that it really didn't save us any money whatsoever. And I guess I just want to get your ideas that you lock people in a room and figure out how we fix the car insurance problems, or at least get it to a point where it's within the national average.
So we made one significant improvement on the car insurance bill, which is if you already had insurance, you didn't have to pay for it a second time. So pretty much everybody in the state on Medicaid, if you were in the other 49 states, you had a car accident, Medicare coverage. In Michigan, we had a law that said you had to buy your medical insurance a second time. It cost you $1,000 a year. Medicare recipients in the state, for the most part, have not that $1,000 off. If you have, at your full-time employment, health care, you can avoid that $1,000 double charge. But your underlying point is right. You know what they did? I was in the middle of this. I was saying to the hospitals who charged too much money, and I was one of them. And I was saying to the long-term care providers and the trial lawyers and the insurance companies, let's get in a room and work this out. And they were like, no, we got the votes. Well, Mike Shirkey and the Republican senators at 2 in the morning, he had votes. And they passed a 2 a.m. bill, which did some good things, but actually did some damage, because instead of everybody solving it, they had problems. Now, it's the darndest thing, the people who are mad at me, the long-term care providers, they signed up to buy campaign. I'm like, guys, what are you doing here? And they said, you remember when you said to us, come to your office and work it out? We made a mistake. We should have sat in a room and with experts in the calm of the day, worked out something that we're all 70% happy with, instead of trying to be greedy and fight for 100%. That's the tone that I'm going to set. So the car insurance has a long way to go, but the way to do it is not for the trial lawyers to try to get 51% of the vote, in the insurance industry to try to get 51% of the vote. It's to get everybody in a room and say, we've gone from the highest in the country to the third highest in the country. Okay, that's not my idea of a lot of progress. Okay, we need to be competitive and do it together. All right, last question of the night. Who's got it? Go ahead. Our host is going to bring it home.
I'll start back right here. All right, we talk about innovation, creativity, exciting places for young people to live, right? I'm also, outside of my neighborhood association duties and development here in Boston Square, I'm the president of a film company. We have a film and media incubator here in town called GRMI5, where it's essentially workforce development. We're training people how to do various jobs in the film and media industry. We are interested in keeping those people here in Michigan working, right?
So, film credits?
We're talking about film credits. Okay. And we want to bring that film incentive back to Michigan. How do you feel about that?
My daughter Carolyn got her degree in film, worked here in the film industry, and the week Rick Snyder canceled the film credits, she moved to New York and hasn't been back. You do not have to explain to me the importance of film credits to our young people in that entire industry. They may have been too generous. I don't know why you're worried about that. They should not have been canceled. And so bringing back some element of credits is absolutely part of keeping young people here. So I just want to say thank you. So I just said, how many of you are willing to help me with getting people out to the next meeting? All right? Thank you for giving me your time. I'm going to be back to Grand Rapids again and again. If you got anything in particular you want to talk about on the way out, please stop. And thank you very much for hosting me in this beautiful facility.